Skidaway Island is currently home to a few beautiful communities like the Landings, South Harbor, and Modena. Skidaway Island is rich in not just its beauty, but its history as well. Skidaway Island once consisted solely of cotton plantations worked by enslaved African Americans until after the Civil War. After the Civil War, 400,000 acres of land along the coast that were formerly owned by Confederate landowners went to former enslaved people and African Americans who helped fight in the Civil War. This land ranged from Charleston, South Carolina to St. Johns River, Florida. But how exactly did African Americans acquire Skidaway Island?
Edward Stanton, the Secretary of Defense, had come down, sent by Lincoln. And Stanton said, okay, to Sherman, we're going to get in a room and we're going to meet with 20 African Americans, mostly freedmen and mostly preachers. And out of that meeting came that 40 acres. It wasn't 40 acres and a mule, it was just 40 acres. People attached that later on. So that was the big deal. And on Skidaway Island in Ossabaw, it actually worked. And the incredible thing that one of the ministers that was in that meeting with Sherman took over 1,000 people that we know to Skidaway Island.
The minister who brought over 1,000 slaves to Skidaway Island was Ulysses L. Houston. When the people from Savannah went over to Skidaway Island, they became a thriving, self-sufficient black colony. They had homes, established local governments, and had farmland, as well as their own school. Ulysses L. Houston was their black governor. But who was Ulysses L. Houston? What did he do for the community?
At that time, he was pastor of this church. After that meeting, Ulysses Houston led 1,000 free former slaves, and they left the city. The church gave him permission to set up another city on Skidaway Island. But what happened was, during the process, before it's called Field Article 15, before it could become law, Lincoln was assassinated.
Everything was great until April 15, 1865, when President Lincoln was assassinated. After Lincoln's assassination, President Andrew Johnson took over. He overturned what Lincoln had implemented and gave former landowners who were not black their land back. This led to free black people turning into sharecroppers. They were sharecroppers for a while until the late 1890s, when a series of horrible hurricanes took place.
In the late 1890s, there would be a series of 7 hurricanes that would hit Skidaway Island as well as the other various sea islands off of the coast of Georgia. And so that would force the people of Skidaway, as well as Green Island and Ossabaw Island, to look for property on the mainland. This last mile strip of land was deemed to be inaccessible, or because we're completely surrounded by marsh. And so it would be open up to African American men to purchase. Women at this time, no matter their ethnicity, could not purchase property. But as the people of Ossabaw, Skidaway, and Green Island caught word of these lands, they would come over and purchase them with their own money. Through the forest, now this line here is going to be marsh. All right, that's the start of the coastline. And then you're talking about marsh, 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 and it hits the main body of the river. Each slit of land was specifically designed so they could have water access.
The Pinpoint Heritage Museum used to be an oyster factory. It is currently a museum that holds many stories of its people's heritage. Today, the mission of the Pinpoint Heritage Museum is to influence people to learn about the community's history.
So the purpose of the Pinpoint Heritage Museum is to educate the Savannah area on the broad Gullah Geechee history, as well as about how the community of Pinpoint established itself and its rich history that has been spanning over 100 years, as well as a smaller sliver of their history of the A.S. Farn & Son Crab and Oyster Factory, which employed 80 to 90% of the community for about 60 years.
It has influenced people to look at things in a new way and to even write books about the community.
Began writing more about the intersection of all the people settling on Skidaway Island where the animals lived and the stories they had about living with nature.
Those who have read Miss Karen Dunbar's books have been informed of historical events like the hurricane.
The book, Burnt Pot Island. The book starts in 1902, but then she refers to the storm on Skidaway Island in 1898.
With people being fascinated by the Pinpoint community's heritage, there's also a need to protect and support it.
From what we've seen and what we've talked with the community, they want more resources. They're working on building out their community center, Pinpoint Hall, as well as there's efforts to stop traffic from coming through the community. You have a lot of people just using the neighborhood as a cut through, but they're speeding, tearing up the road with their large trucks, and so there's actually action being taken now, and just last week we had a series of speed bumps put in, as well as they've been connected with resources to cut trees within the neighborhood, and they're working to better their neighborhood and their community.
The museum itself needs support as well.
With the museum being an old seafood factory that is almost 100 years old, we are facing structural issues. We're on a huge slab of concrete that's, we believe, is slowly sinking into the marsh, as well as we're facing a lot of flooding from the marsh, which has always happened, but is happening more often now.
The Pinpoint community is made up of groups of people who have persevered through trials and tribulations, most coming from countries or descendants of people from other countries. Some were forced into slavery, then became free after fighting in the Civil War, receiving land only to have it taken away and becoming sharecroppers. These people weathered through multiple hurricanes and bought land in the Pinpoint community. These people made something out of themselves from scratch, all while keeping their culture and passing it down. It's American history like this that we need to protect.